Scap, a lot of people are going to listen to us. I've already seen it on Twitter. Hey, you're making excuses. You're saying Nikola Jokic was gas. LeBron is 39 in year 21. You don't make those excuses for him. I don't see the comparison. It doesn't make sense. It's just more, what about this? What about that? But I'm not sitting here making a bunch of excuses for Nikola Jokic. I'm just sitting here like telling the truth. The guy was exhausted and ran out of gas, and it speaks to like he needs a slightly improved supporting cast, and it's the same argument people make about LeBron when he was in Cleveland, and when the first go around in Cleveland, like, hey, LeBron needs a better supporting cast. You know, he can't carry the whole thing by himself. That's basically the same argument, and I was good. I was someone that was making that argument the first 7 years of LeBron's career. I'm not making excuses for Nikola Jokic. I'm just telling the truth about what happened. But what do you think about the people that say, oh, you're making excuses for Jokic, you're just a fan?
Well, Jason, I typically never promote myself, but I'm working on a piece right now. It's going to be a little bit different from what I typically do, and it's not quite ready yet, but I have pretty much conducted all the research I need to on it. What I've done is I've gone back and I've looked at every MVP winner since the 1983-84 season. So roughly 40 years worth of data. And there's 23 guys that have won an MVP over those 40 years. So I looked at all of the guys in their first 9 seasons that they played of their career, because we just saw the end of Nikola Jokic's 9th NBA season. I then looked at every teammate that those 23 league MVPs from 83-84 to this year played with in their first 9 years. I wanted to see how many All-Stars, how many All-NBA team selected players, and how many All-NBA defensive team selected players each of these MVPs played with during their first 9 seasons. There is only one guy, Jason, that has never played with a single one of any of those 3 players. That never played with an All-Star, an All-NBA selected player, or an All-NBA defensive selected player. That's Nikola Jokic. He's the only guy that has played with 0 such players in his first 9 years. The only guy really that's close, and this is probably a good comp because Kevin Garnett is generally regarded, he's like a fringe top 20 player. I'd say he's somewhere 18 to 22 all time. He played with 4 of those players in his first 9 seasons. He missed the playoffs in his first year. He then went out in the first round 7 straight years, Jason. He was eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. His first 7 full years in the playoffs. He then made 1 conference finals, lost there, and then basically he was out of Minnesota. He went and joined a Boston super team to get his one and only ring. Nikola Jokic, basically the only comp to Kevin Garnett with a similar, just pathetic and lacking supporting cast, has played in 2 conference finals and won a championship. Like, it's just unbelievable. Like, of course, look, you can't lose a 20-point lead at home in a game 7. Like, I'm not trying to diminish the fact that happened. But looking at the supporting cast that he has had to work with over his first 9 seasons, it's the worst of any all-time great player in 40 years. Basically, since the ABA-NBA merger, he has less help than any player that has ever existed that are in these top 10 to 20 to 30 conversations. And none of those guys could win anything. He's got a title already. So, I don't want a super team. I don't want the competitive balance of the NBA to be destroyed. I just want him to get a viable guy that he can count on. I don't want to see another Hakeem Olajuwon or Dirk Nowitzki where these guys just don't have enough help and they just only get that one fringe MVP.
You just compared him to Dirk and Hakeem. And Dirk was the person I was thinking you may, but Dirk got to play with Steve Nash, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Did he get to, who else did, who all did, maybe Jason Kidd, refresh my, who did
Correct.
Dirk
even that 2011 ring, everyone will point to that 2011 team where they slayed the Miami Heat super team in their first year together in Miami. Yes, that was probably one of the lighter supporting casts we've seen in at least the last 25 years. But he still had Sean Marion, who had been like a perennial all-star throughout his career. He had Jason Kidd on that team. I mean, there were some pretty high level. Tyson Chandler, who had some All NBA defensive selections throughout his career, that was on that team. Jason Terry, who was a Sixth Man of the Year, I believe, in the NBA one year. So I mean, there's no doubt Dirk had a better roster surrounding him than Nikola Jokic has had for the 9 years that he's been in the NBA. And of course, as you point out, yes, Dirk had Steve Nash for the beginning portion of his career. So I mean, maybe you can look at Hakeem Olajuwon's the first championship, the '94 run, because Otis Thorpe was pretty much his second best player on that team. Otis Thorpe, who made one All-Star his entire NBA career. But then the second season, remember, Clyde Drexler was acquired in advance of the trade deadline. Clyde Drexler was still a perennial All-Star at that point, and he's a top 50 all-time player. So, I mean, Jason, I've seen two guys, if you want to throw Hakeem in as the third, because we'll just kind of pretend like Clyde Drexler wasn't on that second team, but primarily I've seen two guys that have been able to win more than one championship since 1990 with really just an all-star caliber guy, not like a maybe not like a superstar caliber guy. That's Kobe Bryant with Pau Gasol in 08 and 09, and then Michael Jordan with Scottie Pippen, which, look, Scottie Pippen probably is a superstar. He's a top 50 all-time player. Like, Nikola Jokic needs one guy he can bank on. Who's it going to be? It hasn't been Jamal Murray. It's obviously not Michael Porter Jr. And like you said, there's not much flexibility with the cap right now. I don't know how they can improve this roster in the offseason. KCP is on a player option next year. They own $15 million, if you can believe that. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is making $15 million next year on a player option. And I believe Reggie Jackson is probably going to activate a player option for $5 million next year as well. Those would be the two names maybe that you try to move on expiring deals to try to upgrade the roster to some degree. But their top four guys are pretty much, Jason, they're locked in for at least next year, and in many cases beyond until like 27 or 2028.
Gap, the only thing I'm going to disagree with that you've said is I do think Scottie Pippen has a case as top 30, top 35 NBA player. The guy was so incredible defensively. I think he has an argument. When I sit around and think, there's Rodman on defense, there's Dennis Johnson on defense, who I think about. Obviously, there's some centers, but Scottie Pippen's right there with Dennis Rodman as a defensive player. And anyway, Scap, great job, great information. I want you to circle when you finish that video about comparing Jokic's first 9 years to everyone else. Want to have you back